What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. It's been a minute. Compliments of the season, guys. I wish you a very merry Christmas and a happy new year in advance. So guys, today I'm going to be showing us how to make this cow neck top with spaghetti or with straps. So this is the back view. So guys, if this is something you're interested in, let's get right into the video. So guys, I'm going to be drafting the pattern on this paper first. So now the first thing I'm marking is the bust line, which is 10 inches, the waistline, which is 16, and the full length of my top, which is going to be 20 inches, as you can see. So I'll just go ahead now to extend my lines. You can see I've gone ahead to extend my line. So this is going to be the shoulder line, and I'm just labeling all the lines, according to what I mentioned to you guys earlier. So now I'm going to, on my shoulder line, I'm going to mark my shoulder measurement divided by 2. So I'm gonna add to mark 7 inches, and I marked 7 inches on my bust line, and from that 7 inches I came up by 2 inches. This is so as to make my armhole. So I'll connect what I marked earlier as my shoulder measurement down to the new 2 inches line I just marked now, and I'm going to extend this line. This new line is going to be our chest line, so I'm just going to go ahead now to label that, and I'm going to also use my armhole curve to make my armhole curve at this point. So yeah. So now guys, the next thing is the neck measurement, which is going to be 3 inches by 3 inches, 3 inches for the neck depth and neck wideness. So I'll just connect both measurements like so, and I'm going to also use my curve rule to make my neck curve. This neck part is not really necessary, so you don't have to do this. We don't need the neck part. So I'm just going to slope my shoulder also by 1/2 inch. So now guys, the next thing is to mark my bust circumference divided by 4. My bust is 34 inches divided by 4, so I'm gonna add to mark 8.5 inches, and I went ahead to add 1 inch as my seam allowance. So I'm marking my waist circumference also divided by 4, and also on the last line I went ahead to just mark my bust circumference. What I marked on the bust, I had 9.5 inches on the bust, so I went ahead to mark that on the M line. So now, starting from the end of my armhole curve, I'm going to start measuring, and I'm going to use my tape like so. You can see what I'm doing, and I'll just make sure I measure 5 inches here. So now I'll measure from that point to the end of my armhole curve again, just to get a straight line. And as you can see, I had like 3.2 something. So I'm going to mark this at the center front of my pattern paper, and I'm going to connect both dots together. You can see this is very simple to do. So now guys, we are done cutting. We are done drafting this pattern. I'm just going to cut this out carefully. You can see what I'm cutting. So now guys, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to cut out the back pattern, right? So but before I cut out the back pattern, I'm just going to hold my darts on this piece of paper, on this pattern paper. This is so as to avoid gaping on the back pattern. So I'm just going to hold this at the center like so. Just hold this a little bit. So guys, I'm going to be using this same piece of pattern paper for the back and front, to cut out the back and front. So I'll use my paper tape to hold down the middle of this pattern paper like so. Like I mentioned, this is so as to avoid gaping on the back pattern. So guys, this is the fabric I'm using. This is silk, and you can see it is a little bit stretchy. So I'm just going to fold this into 2. I'm going to cut this on fold, and I added 1.5 inches at the hem of this piece of paper for my sewing allowance. I'm going to use this to fold this at the hem, right? So I'm just going to cut this out. So now guys, I'm going to use this as the back. You can see this is what it looks like. So I'll just place this aside, and I'll work on this pattern paper to modify for the front. So now guys, you can see I've gonna add to remove the dart I placed earlier. So now guys, I'm going to slash this chest line. You can see, make sure you don't slash this to the end. I'm just going to slash this a little bit like so, and I'm going to use my pattern paper to hold this end down so it doesn't cut off. So now guys, the next thing is to place this piece of pattern paper on a bigger piece of pattern paper, right? So, and the spread, I'm going to make sure it is just about 3.5 inches, and I'll hold this down. Make sure that your slash and spread, or your spread rather, is between 3 inches to 4 inches. If you spread it too much, it's going to be too wide. And I'm going to measure from the end of my armhole down to my bust line. You can see I'm gonna have to mark that, and I'm just going to trace out the beginning of this my top. You can see what I'm doing. I'm going to trace that to the beginning of the pattern paper, and I'm going to trim this end also here. So guys, this piece of pattern paper, remember that this is going to be a slash and spread method, so that is why I'm placing another piece of pattern paper under. So guys, once I'm done spreading my slash, I'm just going to cut the armhole part. After cutting, I'm going to fold the paper again. This is why it's important to use a very big piece of paper, so you can do what it is that you want to do. So guys, this one I'm folding here is going to serve as the facing for my cowl neck. I hope you understand. Remember that we're not going to be hemming the neck or anything, so you need a facing for the inner parts of the cowl neck. And I'm just going to trace this out. I'm going to trace the armhole part out, you can see, and I'm going to trace this other side also. So now guys, we are basically done with this pattern. I'm just going to open this up. So this is what it looks like, right? And I'm just going to make sure that this end here, remember this part here is the facing, is going to be on the inside of the top. I'm just going to make sure that this part is very straight. So here it is. We are done with the front piece. I'm just going to place this on my material, and again, don't forget to leave 1.5 inches or 1 inch at the hem of your top, which is going to serve as the hemming allowance. And I'm going to trace this out. And guys, don't forget that you are going to be cutting this on fold also. So I'm just going to trace this out, and guys, I'm going to notch the part where my fold is going to start from, right? I hope you understand. I'm going to chalk this other part also. These are the parts where it's going to be folded inside, right? I hope that English is correct. So here, this is what I mean. Those parts I notched like so are the parts that are going to be on the inside of my top, just like this. You can see that is what is going to form the cowl neck. So yeah, that is it. So just make sure you notch that part that is going inside, right? So guys, we are done cutting. Now let's start sewing. So before we start sewing guys, you want to make sure you also cut your straps, your spaghetti straps. So that is the first thing I'm going to be cutting. So my spaghetti strap, I'm going to make it 14 inches, and I'm going to add 1 inch as seam allowance. So guys, this is 15 inches, and the wideness, I'm going to use 1.5 inches. So guys, even as I use this 1.5 inches and I added 1.5 inches, I used 1 inch as my strap and ½ inch as my sewing allowance, I still later realized that the strap was a little bit fat for me. You could see at the beginning of this video, so I'm going to just adjust this later. So when you're cutting yours, just make it just 1 inch, right? So 1.5 inches is going to be too wide. So guys, you can see what I'm doing. I'm just sewing this on the wrong side, and I'm going to turn this. So sew this on the wrong side, turn it inside out, and iron it out. So this is what both straps look like. So now guys, the next thing, I'm going to place my strap at that point I notched earlier. Don't forget that point I notched earlier. So if that point you notched is not wide enough to accommodate your strap, you can just go ahead to notch it a little bit more, just like what I'm doing here. So I'm going to place my strap, and don't forget that this is the front piece. So I'm going to place my strap here, and I'm going to sew this down. I'm going to sew this down with my facing. You can see I'll sew the strap down to the front piece, and I'll also sew down the armhole part. So I'm just going to use office pins to hold down both pieces so you can make my sewing easier. So I'm going to sew this down, and I'll do the same thing to the other side. I'll turn it inside out, and I'm going to iron it and I'll show you guys when I'm done. So here it is, guys. I'm gonna add to sew down my straps to the front piece. You can see what it looks like. So you can see that our cowl neck is already forming. So I'm just showing you guys what I sew earlier. So yeah, it's very simple to do. So here it is, guys. You can see our cowl neck is already forming. Yeah, so now guys, the next thing I'm going to do is just to place my back piece on the front piece. So guys, before placing your back piece, before sewing down your back piece, make sure that you place a small facing on the back piece, on the neck of the back. Make sure you place a small piece of facing there. So my facing is about 1.5 inches wide, and the length is just the exact length of the back, right? So I'm going to show you guys how to fix the strap to the back piece later, right? So for now, just use your facing. Make sure you sew down your facing on the back piece. Sew it down just like you would sew a bias to a neck. So now guys, for the 2 armholes for the back, I've also gonna add to cut you can see these little straps. So I'm going to sew this down to the armhole part. So you can see after sewing this down, I'm going to turn this to the other side. As I sew this on the right side first. Oh my god. So I'm going to turn this to the other side and sew this down. You can see this is very simple. I just sew it down like how you would sew a bias to a neck or a sleeve, right? So that is very simple to do. So guys, the next thing I'm going to do now is to join the sides. So remember that I left 1 inch as the sewing allowance. So I'm going to sew both sides down by 1 inch. I'll sew the other side also by 1 inch. So we are almost done with this tutorial. So you can see I'll just sew this down by 1 inch. So guys, I'm done sewing down the sides. Now the last thing is to fix the strap to the back piece. So now guys, I'm just going to open up. I'm going to remove some seams from the end of the neck. You can see what I'm doing around this armhole side on the back. So I'm just going to insert the strap in between the facing and the back piece, and I'm going to sew this down. Right, I hope you understand. So after sewing down the straps, I'm just going to iron the facing down to the back piece with my hemming gum so that they can lay flat on each other, right? And guys, this is the finished look. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't. I'm going to see you all in the next video. Bye.